You're listening to Spill the Sea with Ashwati Ramesh.
Hey Vaibhav, so great to meet you finally. Thank you for joining me here and agreeing to do this episode with me.
Thank you, Ashwati, for having me here on this podcast.
Of,
Really excited to unfold what we have.
of course. I did actually want to also give a quick shout out to Copper and Cloves, which is a plant based cafe. Um, and I'm aware that you actually already know about this space and have done some work with the founder, Sarah.
So yeah,
Uh,
it's been quite some time. I guess 4 years back, 4 5 years back, and it was very rare to find such kind of a personality who actually thinks through sustainability from day one. And it was very exciting to work with her, and I hope we'll be able to engage further as well. So, great person to be working with, I would say.
Absolutely. And they've let us pretty much take over their studio space for this.
Yeah,
So
I
grateful
think
for
this
that.
was always her plan from day one,
Right.
as far as I remember.
Yeah,
And I'm very grateful and very happy to see that it has unfolded in such a beautiful way. So
absolutely.
great.
Awesome. Okay, so before we dive into the nitty-gritties of the industry, would you like to give us a quick brief of what exactly Bambrew does?
Sure, why not? So Bambrew was, I would say, emerged into a company back in 2018 with the core vision of eradicating single-use plastics.
Yeah.
And that too from the packaging industry, because if you see now, packaging contributes roughly around 60%, 59 plus percent of the overall plastic which is coming to the waste. And that was the reason that we focused on packaging industry, which could impact in a larger way in eliminating single-use plastics from the environment. To do so, we use materials which are sourced locally, mostly, or most of them, and are right replacement of single-use plastics.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, in today's world, we say eco-friendliness as sustainable material or an alternative, but it's not only eco-friendliness; it's also about functionality. It's also about scale,
Yeah.
cost efficiency, and the shifting cost. So these are the core principles at Bamboo that we look after, where not only the environmental impact is measured, but also ensured that the scalability is are met, because these are extremely large companies that we are working with or talking about. We consume more than 400 million tons of single-use plastics every year, so that's a huge scale to work along with, and we ensure that whatever the material we generate, those are all scalable, and at
Right.
the same time does not hamper with the plastic performance.
Got it. So I do want to get into those details a bit more, but
Sure.
first, please tell us what's your journey been like before founding Bambrew? What have you been
Okay.
up to before this?
Oh, well, I'm not a chemical engineer. That's what I mostly get. Are you a chemical engineer?
Right.
I'm a fashion technologist by
Oh,
education. I
cool.
did my graduation from NIFT, Bangalore, and most of my time went on to creating materials and manufacturing space, because what I did was apparel production. Worked with Van Heusen team in my early days, and then moved on to work with Future Group as
Okay.
well. Before jumping into the startup ecosystem, I worked with one of my college senior into the startup ecosystem called Baku. It is a fashion jewelry brand
Right.
made up of fine silver jewelry. And then I'd worked with Leverage Edu. I had my own startups previous to this, which was into supply chain technology, basically supplying fresh to all the B2B segments like restaurateurs or the businesses into that space. Got acqui-hired by one of our competition, and since 2018, I've been trying to solve for the single-use plastic with Bamboo.
Right. And what caused this jump or transition from?
Well, couple of reasons to it. One, I had been a very ambitious guy myself since day one. Um, and in 2018, there was a lot of noise around single-use plastics getting banned, and I studied a lot on what are the ill effects of plastics onto the environment, and this is one space that can be built for 100 years. So we are not here for like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years duration, get acquired and move out. I think this is a business which can be built for 100 years and beyond. and that really excites me, and or excited me at that point of time. And at the same point, you could solve for one of the very major challenges which the world is facing today, which is single-use plastics.
Yeah.
So these are the reasons I would say, the space is extremely lucrative. We are the only one into this space to develop, because it's not easy to solve for.
Yeah.
It's been 6 years we have developed this solution, and we just got, you would say, the approval to actually market this into the entire ecosystem.
Right.
And the gestation period of these brands that we work with is extremely long, somewhere around 2.5, 3 years also, right?
Okay.
So you have to keep working, you have to keep the perseverance there, and you have to keep your persistence in place. So it's been a long journey, I would say, but a very fruitful one, and uh, very enriching experience I've had so far into this journey.
Yeah.
So uh, uh, both the things: one, the space was good, lucrative, and as well as there could be something that you could leave behind as your legacy.
Right. And how did you and Kunal, who's your co-founder, how did you all meet and decide to start
Oh well,
this?
that's another story. So I and Kunal know each other from 25 plus odd years. He
Okay.
was my teacher when I was in school.
No way.
Yeah, it is. So he was doing his engineering from BIT Meshra.
Okay.
We come from the same hometown, and so by choice he took like few students to teach physics. I was fortunate enough to be part of those few students, and I was in class 10th or 9th, I remember. And he used to come over the weekends and teach this 10-15 folks physics over the weekends.
Yeah.
That's how I've known him. And in the Bambrew's journey, he has always been my mentor and an investor since day one with Bambrew. So it's a long, long relationship that we have had, and a strong camaraderie that we share with each other.
Yeah.
A mutual respect is there for what he has built previously into Cropin. He comes from that background, raised, 20 plus, 50 plus $1 million in fund, has establishment in more than 90 countries across the globe. So that's something intrigued me as well, and I thought this is the right time to have him on board, because he was moving out of Cropin at that point of time.
Right.
So that's where we collaborated and thought, let's make this a huge success together.
That's amazing. That's such a nice story, actually. Thank you for sharing. All right. So moving into the market dynamics right now, I think I read recently that India has become one of the top producers of plastic waste. Um, Maybe we can dive into the numbers a bit later, but can you, for our listeners, provide, say, an overview of what the packaging industry here is like?
Oh, well, India, as you rightly said, unfortunate of us, but that's the truth. Uh, the problem is the multi-layer packagings or the single-use plastic, which is humongously consumed in India as compared to the Western world, where they mostly procure the large pack sizes. Here, you can see those one rupee sachets for shampoos,
Yeah.
or 10 rupee sachets for your chips, snacks, and so many other things. So that contributes to a lot of plastic waste generation in India. If you see the opportunity size or the market size in India of packaging is more than $84 billion now, and it is growing, significantly growing. And as the consumerism is growing, this will even grow further.
Yeah.
Right. So if you see the data point, more than 60% of the plastic which is collected, right, only 13% gets recycled.
1-3.
1-3, that's correct. So out of that 13%, it's only PET bottles. The problem lies in segregation of these plastics at the ground level, not recycling it. And today, recycling is a myth, right? It's my personal point of view. I don't know how many of the listeners of yours would agree to it, but all of the plastics which are never, it's not recycled, it's always downcycled into something else.
Right.
Right. You cannot make a product again from recycled plastic. Recycled PET is a failure big time, whether Coca-Cola or anybody else who have been trying to get into our PET or recycled PET as we call it.
Yeah.
And the entire recycling or the collection happens only of the PET, nothing of MLPs or single-use plastic, because it is easy to identify, right? You can actually segregate it from the entire waste, put it into the recycling stream, and then recycle it, which is not possible for other kinds of plastic. So there is not only one plastic. We say plastic, but there are multiple types of plastic. There is
Yeah.
polypropylene, there is polyethylene, there is PET, there is BOPP, and so on and so forth. And each of the plastics type has a variation of recycling, or temperature for melting is different for each one of them.
Yeah.
And to put that into the right stream of recycling, we'll have to segregate it. But forget about me and you, who are more aware people at the ground level who are the rack pickers and all of them, they cannot differentiate between a polypropylene and a polyethylene. That is where the major challenge is. And eventually the plastics cannot be recycled more than 4 times. You'll have to keep on adding virgin plastics, because it loses viscosity each time you recycle it. It becomes brittle and brittle and brittle. That's why
Right.
you will see those toys on those roadsides which are sold are very brittle in nature, right? Because those are made from recycled or downcycled plastics,
Right.
right? So as you keep on increasing the recyclability of the plastics, you'll have to keep on increasing the amount of virgin plastic getting added to it. And at
Right.
some point of time, it will be 95% virgin and 5% recycled plastic.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, but end of the life is what? End of the life is all microplastics, whatever you create. So
Yeah.
we need to focus on creating alternative materials rather than recycling, is what I feel.
Right.
Recycling right now, it is so much into news, but I feel you should stop manufacturing plastics and try to focus on creating alternatives, which Bambrew is trying to do right now.
Right. And if you could elaborate a little bit on the material flows of plastic, and maybe you could also touch upon, you mentioned only 13% does get recycled. What happens to the rest of it?
So rest of it, you can say majority of it goes for landfill, and 20% gets incinerated, which releases GHG emissions such as nitrous oxide or your methane, which is 25 times as harmful than your carbon emissions or the carbon dioxide which is released. So unfortunate, but this is the truth. That is the number that we are looking at, and that is the reason I kept on advocating for alternative materials.
Right. And I was actually talking with Sarah earlier today about this. We've moved more from a, traditionally, we've always gone with a more circular approach, right? So now we're in this take, make, waste culture, right? So could you share some thoughts of yours on, what the upstream and downstream innovations that are needed to make this a more circular economy?
Well, great that you touched upon that upstream and downstream part. So upstream, we need to understand what is upstream. Upstream talks about source of the material. Downstream talks about recyclability or the end of life,
Right.
right, of the material. So personally, I would recommend people to use reuse as much as they can onto the materials which are sourced from the right resources. I'm not saying make a plastic and reuse it, because end of the life is microplastic.
Yeah.
Maybe a cotton bag when you're going out for shopping, or maybe a lunch box which is made up of steel
Yeah.
that can be used, right? See, it is impossible, and let's be a little practical about, you cannot carry your own straws, you cannot carry your own cups for all of these places. Let's be practical. It's not practical in any way. Nobody can carry those many things with them,
Yeah.
right? So use as much natural materials as you can, or a biodegradable material, or which is more compostable, I would say. Compostable also has two facets to it, by the way. One is home and one is industrial. Industrial
Yeah.
compostable are as good as plastic. I'm talking about downstream now, right? Although the source of those industrial compostable materials are good, let's say, from the plant sources, but the end of life is microplastics,
Yeah.
unfortunately, right? So, and you're just adding one layer of more plastic into the overall environment or ecology. So you'll have to be cautious about what you're using as a material, and you have to refuse. Only then you'll have, people have the most power, I would say, in defining or shaping up the future. So
Yeah.
if people are being more aware towards what they're consuming, what they're using, I think that would make a huge difference into the future. in terms of how we are consuming materials per se. So, yeah, on the upstream side, let's focus on sourcing it from the right sources, making sure that nothing is happening on the downstream because of that upstream. So, downstream, we will have to focus on materials which are degraded naturally without having any kind of human intervention, is what we'll have to think. And also, very important to also analyze what is going to be the future of that particular material. When we invented plastic, nobody thought that this could create a problem in that long term when we created in 1800s.
Yeah.
Right, today we are in 2025, I would say. So it's been a long journey for plastic, but we have misused it somewhere or the other. So we'll have to be very careful about what material we are going to use today, which should not hamper the future. So
Yeah.
we'll have to be very mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. And you did touch upon consumers and their behavior, right? Are you seeing the shift happen? What are you seeing on
Yeah,
ground?
shift is happening for sure. People in the urban areas, I would say, are becoming more aware because they are more prone to these kind of informations as compared to the people living in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. That will take some more time. But I see that there's a lot of awareness into the people in consuming right product. But still, sustainability is only good until they create a dent into their pocket, right?
Yeah.
Let's take an example of Sarah itself. Like the product that she's manufacturing or she's selling today, it's very good, very healthy, and plastic free and everything.
Yeah.
But you would not find this place to be crowded enough, right? Because it's little expensive than for the mass of the people,
Yeah.
right? So I think we'll have to make sustainability affordable,
Yeah.
and only then it will be a success. And you cannot really create a product which is expensive. And expensive is a relative term, to be honest. Like we are comparing it with plastic, so we'll have to think in absolute terms, not in relative terms. What is expensive on what, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's expensive cost-wise today, but is it going to be? It is going to be really expensive in future, right? For our generations to come, or for our elder generation, and for us as well, right? So we'll have to be mindful of that, and I think the urban crowd is getting more aware towards it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. So, Vaibhav, what is your current product line?
So we are more focused on creating solutions for the primary packagings, which is the major portion of the plastic waste which is getting generated. So anything and everything from FMCG to CPG packagings to
Okay.
your food packaging or retail, e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, and so on and so forth. So we have created materials which could replace plastics in all of these sectors.
Right. And could you elaborate on the actual material of your products?
We are under patent right now.
Okay.
One patent has been granted, another
Okay.
patent is in pipeline. So I might not be able to speak a lot on that. But if I tell you, most of my product are, or the materials that we use, are indigenously sourced and come from the renewable resources.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And maybe we could talk about functionality in that case. How does it
So
stack
it's
up?
equivalent to your plastics.
Okay.
All right. So there are certain parameters in plastics which defines the shelf life of the product,
Yeah.
which inherently defines the integrity of the product which has to be maintained. So, for example, a biscuits pack, right? Packaging is a provider of a kind of a barrier for biscuits not to interact with the outside environment in
Yes.
terms of oxygen or in terms of water, vapor, and all of that. So, whatever the plastics has provided as a barrier to these biscuits packaging, for example, we have given the similar barriers or even better barriers in some places to the materials which are being packed inside, so that the product integrity is maintained and
Yeah.
the shelf life is maintained as desired by the brands.
Right. And you did touch upon the affordability point,
Right.
right? So obviously, this green premium is a big roadblock in terms of widespread adoption. How are you seeing this or how do you think this would evolve in the next few years?
Innovation is the only answer to this, right? If you see, more than 50% of our product portfolio is almost at par with plastic or even cheaper than plastic.
Okay.
And 50% of my portfolio is roughly 50%, not the entirety, is at a premium of 10 to 15%. Right? As I said, expensive is a relative term.
Yeah.
10-15% on a product line is not so expensive, but we are sure that we'll be able to bring that down as well as we scale up. Right.
Right. I think I also read that you said that the manufacturing processes itself are sustainable.
Right.
Do you want to share some more on that?
So yeah, we are our wastages have been lesser than 5.5%, where the industry standards are roughly around 11-12%. So whatever we are procuring, we are consuming almost everything. So that way, that is one leg where we say that we are more sustainable. Secondly, we are incorporating the solar into our system for generating electricity or power, which will run the factory that we have.
Right.
And fortunately, will be carbon negative when we do that into the near
Okay.
future.
That's great. And this is your own manufacturing
That's correct.
setup?
Yes.
Okay. So everything is entirely manufactured here. There's nothing
Yes.
outsourced.
There are few materials or there are few processes which are outsourced. Since we are a startup, we don't have
Sure.
all the manufacturing facility in-house. So since the material that we have developed can run on the same plastic machine, so the shifting cost is extremely almost zero. There's no shifting cost. So if you see, we have many partners who are working with us on several product lines.
Right.
Right. But we do have our own manufacturing facility, which is spread across roughly 3 acres, and 1.5 acre is covered under the manufacturing facility. And we have expansion scope of 3 acres
Okay.
that we have right now. And we hope to have all the manufacturing facilities in-house as well. And we still continue to work with, and we would always want to continue to work with partners and to develop them alongside with us into this sustainable journey together.
Right. That's fantastic. Talking about these partners, right? What is the infra like? Is it up to mark? Does the infra need upgrades?
Most of them need upgrades. India packaging industry is mostly fragmented,
Okay.
right? So there are people who have just got one machine sitting in a corner manufacturing a plastic bag, right? Where there is no quality parameters or there is no QMS in place.
Yeah.
There is no certification in place. There is no standardization in place, right? There are only handful of manufacturers who understand all of this, and that is why you see these major brands such as FMCG brands, Unilever or others, work with only few of them, like 4
Yeah.
5, not more than that. Is because only these people are able to go beyond the threshold of the requirements of Unilever in terms of compliances or in terms of how the manufacturing facility should be. So
Yeah.
most of our partners are medium to low scale at this point of time, and we are looking to partner with more established businesses as well, or the established manufacturing facilities as well.
Got it. And you did mention the kind of clients that you're working with.
Right.
Because this is, I think, a slightly newer space for traditional players to understand, who are the kind of businesses that would buy into this first?
I, I'm under NDA, so I cannot speak
Okay.
or take name of those companies, but mostly all of the big names that you would have heard of in FMCG sector or the CPG sector, we are working with all of them, and you would soon see the commercialized product coming into the market very soon with one of the largest FMCG company globally.
Okay.
So these are some of the companies, as I mentioned, we work with, and the focus is to get more and more company to work with, where we can create an impact by substituting plastics into the entire supply chain and the ecosystem of packaging.
Right. And what has been, say, the most challenging point in terms of converting a potential customer to an actual customer?
Well, the most interesting part is this, that we never approached them. we always got a inbound request because there's nobody who's trying to solve for it right now, and everybody is looking for an alternate.
This is a
It's
great place to be for a startup,
right, absolutely. It's a
right?
good problem to solve for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, door opening has never been a challenge for us. I mean, we have never heard a no from anybody. Either we have approached or they have reached out to us. So it's a great place to be in, as you rightly said. But at the same time, there are multiple challenges because the process is very stringent. You have to go through multiple processes. You have to speak with multiple teams, right from R&D to design to procurement to everyone, right? And it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then testing all of these materials into their current manufacturing stream, and then testing in the real time, testing at the lab, all of that, it takes a lot of time. And secondly,
How long typically?
somewhere between 1 year to 3 years time is the onboarding time of a large FMCG or CPG customer, I would say.
Right.
First 3 months it will only go in initial conversations, then it will go for, so there are multiple steps to it.
Sure.
So yeah, so that's, and ultimately it's the cost. As I said, it has to be at par or at a minimal premium, I would say, from their current purchase, what they're doing in plastics. So that's the major hurdle we have had, because it's a chicken and egg story, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have scale, you'll not be able to bring the cost down.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to bring the cost down, you'll never achieve the scale,
Yeah.
right? So you'll have to compromise somewhere to get to that level, and that's what we have done at the initial stages. Okay, let's go ahead, and hopefully with the scale we'll be able to bring the cost down much further, where I'll be able to serve you
Yeah.
in certain categories. In certain categories, we are already having a good price point, so that's not a
Right.
challenge.
All right. So, Vaibhav, I think, again, you mentioned this earlier in our conversation about the industry being largely informal as well. How are you seeing? Is there room for this to become more structured, more formal? Because I know there's so many challenges, especially in waste management.
Well, no, I don't think so. If people say that, okay, I'm going to, you know, formalize everything, I want to, as I said, it's, I would like to structure everything in a way. It is impossible, because what I'm telling you about the market size of $84 billion is only on the, I would say, formalized sector.
Okay.
There is like informalized sector so huge that you can't even put a number to it, and you would need to satisfy the requirements of those small, medium, and very, very small kind of businesses, which can be only done through those small manufacturers. So you cannot really organize the entire sector and say that, I'm organizing the sector. I don't think it is possible, even today or in the near future as well. At least 40, 50 years, I don't see that happening at all.
Okay. Of course, there are also infra limitations,
Right.
capacity
Right.
limitations.
You can't manufacture each and everything, right?
Yeah.
No matter how large you become a company, like there's a company in packaging and plastics which is $19 billion in revenue generation every year. Still, they cannot supply to a local vendor yet. It is impossible, literally impossible, because you cannot have that much of capacity to cater to the entire requirement of the market.
And you did say, 40, 50 years. So, what's this transition period going to look like in that case?
Well, that also leads me to another answer that I'll like to give you is, transition period is long. It is not going to be anything lesser than 5 years from now. Once you have developed a product, once you have certifications, once you have licenses in place, after that 5 years minimum, because you'll have to, nobody's going to invest in you to put in the machines on day one. You'll have to show product market fit, you'll have to scale that up, hustling your way out. That's what we have been doing, and once you have a large consumer on board, then I think there's a lot of opportunity for large p investors to put in the money in you. However,
Right.
in this space, I would recommend all the VCs to have patience. There's a lot of patient funding required.
Yeah.
You should not be expecting that you put in money today and you get a return tomorrow. It will take time.
Yeah.
It is definitely going to take a lot of time,
Yeah.
unlike your other businesses. So climate space funding is something which is more patient funding required. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that yet into the entire ecosystem. No
Yeah.
large investments as such. However, it has started to happen globally. Very large investments, more than $100 million of funding has happened into this space.
Yeah.
But very few of them, very few. I could count like one of them that I know of has happened into this space. But I think VCs need to be a little bit patient, little bit having more patience on the funding.
Mm-hmm.
And largely, the packaging business is a P investable business on the
Right.
long run when you have those
Yeah.
machines, infrastructure requirement, and all. But getting to that level, you have the requirement of the VC because no P is going to come until you are EBITDA positive, PAT positive, seeing
Yeah.
those multiples and those larger brands. Why a very large FMCG brand come and work with a startup like you?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big risk for these companies, right?
Yeah.
What will happen to you if you go bankrupt tomorrow? You don't have enough funding to supply me at scale. How do I believe you will be supplying to me, right? So until that startup reaches to that level, I think VCs need to be a little bit more patient
Yeah.
and put in a little bit of larger check into such businesses.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I also think that I think they're understanding that this space does need longer timelines. It
Mm,
needs more patient capital. I think how a lot of funds are even structured at this
mm.
point is that their timelines itself are much shorter.
5 to 7 years,
Five
yeah.
to 7 years, I think they are realizing that if they are looking at harder to fund sectors, especially in climate where there's a lot of B2B, lots of capex, they are trying to structure this in a way where they can do a 10+2 or. So hopefully that number will grow. So coming to the regulatory component here, there are a few things that have happened, right? We do have a ban on single-use plastics. There's also EPR. What do you think still needs to be done to make the transition to a more circular approach faster?
Well, there's no shortcut to anything,
Yeah.
right? I think government is doing very rightly in that direction, putting in, getting into these bands and slowly pushing the things. If they become very pushy right now, it would backfire, is what I believe, right?
Yeah.
So, stronger implementation, I would say, would drive this more faster. Somewhere because the economy is so large, it becomes really difficult to have those implementation or have those enforcements much earlier.
Yeah.
I think the government is working in that direction, and that is what is required.
Hmm.
Uh, the layout and the foundation looks extremely promising. Now we'll have to work on the execution of it. It's not only government's responsibility, I would say, it's also our responsibility to ensure whatever the government layouts are there, we are following those, and we are adhering to those regulations and norms.
Hmm.
Somewhere it becomes little hazy and becomes little translucent, but then we'll have to adhere to those norms. I think government has put ban on single-use plastics early, and in 2019 the first ban came in July, and then subsequent rounds they increased the thickness of the microns of the plastics to be used. However, there are a lot of loopholes still. Like in primary packaging, there are no as such regulations at present, which is the major contributor of the single-use plastic. But that's not something which is leading toward to the brands to move out of single-use plastic. So people are becoming more aware. At the same time, I think BIS have introduced very recently EcoMark.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of greenwashing happening under the
Yeah.
name of compostability or under the name of biodegradability into the packaging sector per se. So I think those greenwashings has to be overcome,
Hmm.
and this eco mark, which is being introduced by the BIS very recently, will help in eradicating those greenwashings from the ecosystem as
Right.
well.
Got it. So, are there any countries or regions who are doing a good job where we can sort of look towards?
Um, I think Europe is leading the way, and even India is not behind, I would say. India is very progressive that way. Thanks to our Prime Minister in that particular direction, that he has directed all of us Indians to be plastic free and more sustainable in that way.
And what markets are you present in, and where are you looking to grow towards?
We're currently in India. We did some supplies to UK and Australia and Singapore,
Okay.
Middle East, but then we're not established in those regions. So we are trying to be more established in India, and then work with our customers who we work with, and take us to those international businesses along with them.
Right. And what's in store for Bambrew over the next few years?
There's a lot, I would say. Uh, we are trying to replace your MLPs, multi-layer packagings, which are much more harmful, and there is no process for recycling it at present. So we are trying to create a monomaterial which will replace all of these MLPs while having all the functional properties intact. And we are also trying to look for, Tetra Pak is an MLP, right?
Yeah.
Although it's a company name, but we are trying to replace all those 7 layers which are used in Tetra Paks by an alternate which is much more sustainable, in the way that you do not have to worry about how you are throwing it, whether it is going for landfill or not. It will degrade on its own, even in landfill as well, both aerobic and anaerobic conditions.
Right. Okay, that's exciting. I wish you and the team the best of luck. And maybe to kind of close this conversation, I really like asking this question because it's just different perspectives, right, for different founders. Everyone knows it's crazy chaotic. How do you kind of make time for, I don't know, doing things that you love doing?
See, you will have to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Deeply in love with what you're building, right? More than anything else. Driven by passion, driven by persistence, perseverance, and keeping at it. You will have multiple failures, and one thing that all of us, or all of the people who are into the startup ecosystem, need to understand: success is not a destination, it is a journey, right? And these failures are the stepping stones. So
Yeah.
keep learning from the failures. Nobody is wrong. You're not investable, or you're not getting an investment doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's just that it is not fitting the requirements for the people you have approached to put in money in you. And keep fighting, keep developing, keep doing good for your own self, for what you're building. And and I try to cut off myself, although it is impossible, but try to cut off myself during the weekends, stay with family, put a lot of time there. 100% of yours you put in your family on those, whatever the time that you get there. So I think that's the way to balance it out.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep telling my fellow co-founders. Don't lose hope ever. There's always a tomorrow.
Yeah.
Even if it is a failed startup, that's fine. You'll fail multiple times at multiple startups at multiple levels, but you know best for your own self what you're building is right. So have that faith in your own self, and let not any failure decide your fate.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Amazing. I think this is a slice of wisdom for all the founders who are listening in.
This is just the experience that I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
Of course.
Really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
conversing with you.
Thank you so much, Vaibhav. I know that we only spoke about doing this literally 2 days ago. Really glad that we could make this work this time. Thank you so much for coming on, and this has been very informative conversation for me. I'm sure the listeners also will take a lot away from this.
Sure, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in today. See you next episode.